You probably didn't get up this morning thinking about the community identity of Manhattan, Kansas, but we have one. Broadly speaking, it starts with Kansas State University. It extends to Fort Riley. When people with no connection whatsoever to us hear about us, they will often appreciate the cleverness of the Little Apple. Bill Snyder, and being a legacy member of a Power 5 college sports conference, put us on the national sports map. Those of us who call Manhattan home tend to think in those ways as well, but we will also go a layer or two deeper. We are in the heart of the Flint Hills, so there is an environmental, geographic, and you can make a case even geologic component to our identity. We are founded by free staters, so there's an argument to be made that there is a moral aspect to our identity. And there's a layer of activity that we bring to the community and to each other through human creativity and culture. We'll explore that today with Kendra Kuhlman. She's the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. Within Reason is presented by Stormont Vale Health, by McCown Gordon Construction and the Trust Company. We're live on News Radio KMAN. We're live streaming on YouTube. If you'd like to see our smiling faces, you can go to that website right now. You can search News Radio KMAN, and there you will find us. We are being recorded and will be posted as a podcast on the KMAN website and made available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Mike Matson. I'm an erstwhile journalist, a one-time political operative and lobbyist. I am a current columnist, author, and your host for Within Reason. Our guest today is Kendra Kuhlman. She's the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. Kendra, welcome.
Thank you.
Our first question that we always ask our guests is to tell us who you are.
Well, that's a big question. I am many faces and many things. I did grow up just down the road in Harrington, small town. I am a K-Stater, proud to say. Went to K-State, met my husband at K-State. We ended up moving all around as people do and ended up back in Manhattan as a lot of people do. Our path took us to Boston, took us to Texas. We ended up in Lawrence for several years, and about 6 years ago, we moved back to Manhattan. I have two amazing high school kids, which are about to graduate, sadly or happily. And
depending upon your perspective.
Depending on how you look at that. And I feel like I've worn a lot of different hats throughout my path, my most important being mom, but also community advocate, and very involved and invested in the communities that I've been in.
Before we came on the air, Kendra and I were sort of comparing our chronologies in the community. I'm confident we've been in the same room before, but I think it's the first time we've ever met formally in person. Yeah. And we learned that we each have something else in common. That we both had an experience with Kansas Public Radio, which is the public radio station here. I served on the advisory board, as did Kendra. So it doesn't take long in Kansas for circles to get small.
Exactly.
Talk to us a little bit about the Manhattan Arts Center. For those people who are not familiar with it, what is it?
Sure. Well, I think you have to take into account the history. So Manhattan Arts Center has a very long history dating back to when I was actually in college at K-State. So several organizations, the Manhattan Civic Theater, Manhattan Arts Council, and at that point the Manhattan Arts Center came together and merged together and decided to create something as one, so bringing all the strengths together. And as many people say, we are currently in the old Dutch-made grocery store. So they came together and purchased the former Dutch-made grocery store and renovated it. It took several years, and then opened it as the Manhattan Arts Center in 1993.
And it was, if you drive by it, you don't know what it is. You say it looks like a supermarket, right? So
it kind of does. We do have people come in and still remember it as the Dutch Maid, even though it's been several years. But we are on points with a very big red facade. We also now have several murals on our buildings. So there's a lot of color, a lot of things to see. But yeah, I think it's always been a mission to bring arts for all in our community, and that is our mission.
That is a broad mission, and I'm confident you don't knock that out before lunch. I suspect that there's a lot of work that goes into that. So talk to us just a little bit about the structure of the organization.
Sure. We are a small organization that does many things. We are primarily here for the community, and we are an education center. So as things have evolved through the years, some things have stayed the same, some things have changed. There's a small building beside our main building that houses our fine arts and clay studios. So it's a building that now has also a lot of color on it. But those programs have grown substantially. Most people think of us as just a theater, but we are also a gallery, and we do arts education, we do a theater education, and we also bring arts out into our community. So we try to do a lot with a little. The best that we can.
There's clearly a broad agenda, right? Everything involving creativity, culture. We'll talk about all that stuff as we continue here in the conversation as well. We'll also talk a little bit about how you raise money, what people in the community can do to assist with that. We'll talk about the relationship that you have with the city government, their expectations of you, and all of that stuff. Our guest is Kendra Kuhlman. She's the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. She mentioned it on July 1st, 1996. The Manhattan Civic Theater, the Arts Council of Manhattan, and the Arts Center were legally merged into one organization. That may seem like yesterday, but that was a full 19 years ago, an entire generation. Kendra Kuhlman is the executive director of that system today. She and her volunteer leadership have big plans for the next generation of the Manhattan Arts Center. We'll talk about those as Within Reason continues. You're listening to us on News Radio, KMAN.
Of mental illness and reach out to our loved ones. Talking about suicide and providing support are just two actions that may save a life. Help is just a phone call away. Dial or text 988 to connect with the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or contact Pawnee Mental Health Services Crisis Unit at 1-800-609-2002. Both are available day or night.
Stormont Health is your go-to for exceptional care right in your own neighborhood.
The Flint Hills campus in Junction City is open 24/7 with a full-service hospital and rural health clinic. You'll find primary care and advanced lab services at our Wamego clinic to keep your family healthy without the drive. Our Manhattan campus offers a wide range of primary and specialty providers, plus imaging and lab services, and a pick-me-up at Radina's inside our campus. Visit StormontVale.org.
Stormont Vale Health. High-quality care closer to home.
The Ramsey Show.
Up to 50% of American families are paying their adult children's bills to an average of $1,482 a month. Wow. I've never seen it like this. 25% of millennials, their parents are paying their house payment, their rent, or they're living in their basement. You pay your kids' bills. Psychologists call that enabling. As a matter of fact, enabling is quite the opposite of loving.
Go from paycheck to purpose with The Ramsey Show. Weekdays 10 to 1 on News Radio, KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Today, the Manhattan Arts Center includes a performance hall, a pair of galleries, a clay studio, an art studio, dressing rooms, a set design shop, and administrative offices. As they seek to fulfill that mission, the leadership of the Manhattan Arts Center is always thinking of ways that will help make things better. Kendra Kuhlman is the executive director and our guest today here on Within Reason. Kendra, you've been on the job, about a year and a half?
Year and a half, that's right.
Talk to us about what led to your taking the position.
Sure. I moved here, as I said, a little over 5 years ago. The first thing I did when I moved here was attend the Manhattan Arts Center fundraiser, and decided I really knew I needed to and wanted to get plugged into the arts here. Almost immediately was asked to be on the board, that was an honor to be asked to do that. And then as time went through, I ended up at the Community Foundation. So at the Community Foundation, I worked with the Arts Grants Program. So due to conflict of interest, I did step off the Manhattan Arts Center board, but I've always remained invested.
Sure.
So when there were some changes in leadership, I was asked to throw my hat in. And it was not on my radar, but I did feel really called to at least, give it a shot. And, because my passion is really to grow the arts in our community. And here I am. So.
And you know, that's a typical story, right? When you just think about the way that nonprofit leadership kind of rises to the surface, there's generally always some sort of a connection that the individual has based on either volunteer service or a previous career. Yours was that way, right? So you hit the ground running and give us a sense of what has occurred in your year and a half at the top of the flow chart.
Sure. I'll have to whittle down a little bit, but we have done a lot in a year and a half. The first thing we did, it's always been an organization that is arts for all, but we drilled down and we really defined our mission and our core values of inclusivity, our diversity, equity, inclusion principles. We did several workshops to really define who we are, what we are about. We want every person who walks in our door or volunteers or is in a show, which is also volunteering, or attends a show, we want everyone to feel 100% welcome. And that is the heart of our mission, along with creating experiences for all ages to experience the arts.
I wasn't in the room, but I'm familiar with those conversations, right? When people who feel strongly about those things get in a room and have that conversation, sometimes it's hard, right? Because people may not have lived that experience, but clearly there was a connection, it sounds like, between the arts and culture and this notion of inclusion. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And I have a really strong team in place right now that is also aligned with that vision. I can't do this alone. So not only my team as far as staff, but our volunteers, everyone who helps with our theater program, our directors, we make sure that everyone is in line with our mission and move our mission forward.
It's probably a relatively new phenomenon, probably in the last 6-8 years. Maybe that's too long when you think about this notion of organizations and systems and nonprofits and governments dealing with what you described as DEI or DEIB,
right.
Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, right? And so clearly that is a reflection of where we are as a society and as a culture, and it's one of those things that organizations like yours feel very strongly about. Is that how that came about?
Yes, I do. I feel like we are a hub for the arts and for inclusion. As far as our program growth, we have had to make some changes, and we've pivoted some programs that weren't working and have grown programs that are working. So our youth theater education program is one that we could definitely dive into because we've tripled the size of that in a year and a half. So it's showing that we do have a lot of youth that are looking for inclusion and belonging and a place that they can come and find community.
So not only clearly are you trying to accomplish that goal, but you're also being driven by demand, by numbers, right? You had kids that wanted to be involved with that.
Yes.
Talk to us, just walk us through, we have time, so walk us through just sort of your programmatic areas. What is it that is involved, and what can people participate in at the Manhattan Arts Center?
So if we start out in our arts annex, we have clay classes for all ages. So you could come and you could take a clay class. We have painting, we have drawing classes. We also have scholarships. So I want to make sure we note that we never turn anyone, youth or adult, away. We figure out how to make sure that arts are available to everyone. As far as our youth theater education programs, we noticed that our programs would fill up very fast. A lot of that is our youth theater director, Addie Johnson. She is absolutely incredible, has a theater background herself, has energy out the roof. Everyone wants to be around her. She is just a light in this community, I would say. But we did notice that some kids did not want to be in the spotlight. They wanted to participate in theater, but didn't necessarily want to be on stage. So that bridged into our technical academy. So we have classes for lighting design, sound design, costuming, stage building, stagecraft, and it's opened up more doors.
Is it safe to say that you attract, or you would hope to attract people of all ages?
Definitely. And that does transfer then into our adult theater. So because we are education first, When we have a director for a show, we have an apprentice with them learning. So all the way from first grade, when our theater programming starts, through adults.
You can separate children and young people from adults with respect to how they think about the arts, right? I just, my own experience and the experience of my children and grandchildren, they love drawing. They love getting involved with that. They may or may not have some talent. When you become an adult, you kind of know whether you got talent or not. So help us understand, if when people show up, do they have to have talent to be able to participate?
Yeah. Oh, no. See, that is what I think that is the biggest misunderstanding of the arts. And I feel like that, eliminating that barrier of fear. And we have so many retired individuals that come and they'll take one watercolor class. And it's no barrier to entry. I can bring in my mother-in-law. She's taking a watercolor class and loving it. And now she's, doing it at home, and she's expanded into even more classes. But I think that is one thing, to just come and give it a try. I mean, come and try a clay class. Come and just do, just give it a shot and see what happens. And you'll be surprised how that transfers into your day-to-day life as well.
Exactly, right? You can imagine if you grew up and you had if you played in the band in high school,
yeah,
right? If you took art in 7th grade, and I did, and I got a D+, right? And I still to this day am concerned that she was judging me on my artistic talent and not on my effort, but that's neither here nor there. But the point is, if you have that opportunity and if you think about it as an adult and you show up to MAC, you guys will find something for those folks to do.
Absolutely. And I always tell everyone, I said, everyone is an artist in some way or another. And some people don't think about it, but even planning an event takes creativity. So there's all kinds of things that you do throughout your day that you may not think it may not be a painting or a drawing, but you're using creativity. You're thinking outside of the box. You're learning to process through a problem using creativity. So I feel like this opens the door.
It's one of those things. That's a great point, right? You don't think about it as you're doing it. You are checking the box. You're doing the job. You do what you need to do. But the thoughts and the actions that often go into that are creative by nature.
Exactly.
So help us understand when you look at the work you're doing, right? And you had walked us through sort of the background, and you've been on the job a year and a half. What's it look like? How challenging is it? Give us a sense of the job as executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center.
I would say our biggest challenge is we have a building that is rapidly aging, so maintenance for that is a challenge. And our programs have outgrown our facility size. I do believe in strong partnerships. We have developed some stronger partnerships with the city of Manhattan, with Kansas State University, but our biggest need is always space.
When you think about, and we'll talk about that as we go along, because that you're not unique, right? That there are a lot of organizations that, especially post-COVID, right? It's a different sort of world in terms of the way people will interact with organizations like yours. And you've already talked about how you've grown with respect to youth education, and so it makes sense, right? Leadership implies looking ahead and looking around the corner, seeing what will come. So we'll talk about that. But you'd mentioned the partnership with K-State. When you think about what you do you have this is maybe the wrong word, but do you have competitors in Manhattan in terms of the things that you offer? Do you compete with K-State? Help us understand what that looks like.
That is the exact thing that I never want to use that word. I think together we're all stronger. I think for a long time we have, as arts organizations, worked rather independently. But if we all come together, we all make each other stronger. So we actively partner with the Wareham, with the Art and Light Museum, and we collaborate together to help promote each other's events. So I really don't look at it as competition. I look at it as opportunity.
That's a great point. We had Erin Dragato on here about a month ago or so. Mm-hmm. She's the executive director of the new Museum of Art and Light. She's excited about what they're doing there. It's a hidden gem. If you've not been there, it's worth your time to go there. I think my sense is that over time it will become a huge attraction for this community.
Yeah.
We also had on Derek Richards, who's involved with renovating the press. Blade Mages is going to be with us here next month. And so all of these individuals, such as yourself, that are involved in leadership positions on something to do with arts and performance and theater, this notion of collaboration almost becomes essential.
Right. And we have had discussions with starting a new arts alliance with all of these organizations to meet together, collaborate, even if we just learn what each other are doing. I think that is helpful for our entire community. And you can't help but notice how the Art and Light Museum is a large building that you obviously can't help but notice. But if you've looked over the past 6 years, public art, murals, the Wareham Project, you can't not notice the growth of the arts in our community, and it's shouting right now.
It goes to the sort of the comment that I made at the very beginning of the show, this notion that the culture is here. You just kind of have to open your eyes and look at it, and you have to recognize it and have conversations like this. So give us a sense when you think about maybe the way it used to be, and this is a broad generalization, but I've experienced it in this community. There are individuals that work within silos. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to check this box, and I'm going to go home and call it a day, right? If that's one end of the spectrum, and the other end is full-blown pure D collaboration, where you guys are actively doing that. Where are we on that spectrum at this point?
I think currently the needle has been moved, and we also have a long way to go. A lot of people in our community will say they support the arts. The different organizations will say we support the arts. But what we really need is financial support. We need an alliance, as I was talking about. I also think we do need more city support. I think it cannot not be recognized. The Community Foundation has picked up some help with arts funding through their arts grant program, which has been fantastic. But we need to be able to come together and recognize that this is a key and essential part of our community and growing into the future.
How do you define art?
Ooh. I think it could be anything from creative thinking, collaboration, beauty, being able to stretch yourself and grow.
So I love the way you describe that, right? That's more than just a painting on the wall.
Absolutely.
That is more than just a sculpture in the corner. You're talking about human behavior that leads to those things.
Right.
And a lot of people don't think that way. Is it your sense that that's changing a little bit?
Yes, I definitely think it is, with more and more public art. And the downtown has done an incredible job as well. There are more art galleries now that can showcase. We have so many local artists. People don't realize how many local artists we have in our community, how many people that we would like them to stay in our community. And they often will go off to Kansas City or somewhere else. But I think we have the infrastructure
Kendra
to
Kuhlman,
keep them here.
Kendra Kuhlman is our guest. She's the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. You talk about artists here locally. You're right, there are a number of them. We bring in some others to help do the murals and those sorts of things. But you have galleries at the Manhattan Arts Center. Give us a sense of how those are managed and who gets displayed there, and how if I'm an artist, how do I get my stuff in there?
Sure. We have one main gallery, and then we have smaller galleries throughout our building. But our main gallery, there is an application process, and it's on the calendar year, actually. So we already have 2025's gallery set. So every month or a little over a month, they rotate out. We're very proud. Our next exhibition is a partnership with the Black Entrepreneurs of the Flint Hills. And we have 4 local artists that we'll be featuring. We'll also feature the K-State Art Department. We feature K-State. We're doing a area high school exhibition, which we haven't done in years. So we really try. We do local, and then we also do some juried shows. So we'll be bringing in artists from outside of our community as well.
So it's you and your staff. How many on your staff?
5.
5. So it's 6 people. And the way I hear you describe this is several full-time jobs.
Yeah. It's a lot. We put in a lot of hours. But we all love what we're doing.
Help us understand, just in your career, right, and then the work that you have done professionally, how does this rank in terms of the work?
Definitely the hardest job I've ever had. So one thing, this is a side note, but I did bring some other nonprofit directors together, and we've started a nonprofit group of nonprofit directors that meet regularly, because as a nonprofit director, you're running a small business and you're doing all of these things. You're running an HR department. It could be another whole conversation in and of itself. Right? But I love bringing people together and helping each other and sharing resources.
And you think about it, right? You bring those people together, they're going to have the same headaches you have, right? They're going to have the same challenges and opportunities you have, and it's also one more way that you can collaborate. Exactly. And is that in? You think that's unique to Manhattan? Have you seen that elsewhere?
I think it's very unique to Manhattan. And, not to throw other communities under the bus, but I do feel like as a community, I don't know if it's just we're the right size for it or the right mentality for it, or maybe we're just all really nice people. But I've never had such a welcoming, whenever I bring up a collaboration idea, it's always accepted with open arms, which is great.
Those who have listened to this program regularly since we've been on the air in the middle of October, that what Kendra just described is not unique. We hear that from a lot of different people in a lot of different aspects of our community, whether it's business, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's artistic, whether it's healthcare. That sort of undercurrent of we want to be helpful and friendly is there. And again, that goes to probably what we were talking about at the very top of the show, just the nature of who we are as human beings. The Manhattan Arts Center offers a wide range of performing and visual arts activities. They showcase the artistic talents of amateurs and professionals alike. We will continue our conversation with Manhattan Arts Center Executive Director Kendra Kuhlman as Within Reason continues.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
At Meadowlark, every day is game day. Our team is recruiting nurses and certified nurse assistants for full-time and part-time positions in long-term and post-acute care. This game-winning environment is perfect for passionate and dedicated all-star caregivers. Join the Meadowlark team today and take advantage of increased differentials for night and weekend shifts. To learn more, call 785-323-3898 or search online for Meadowlark Careers in Manhattan, Kansas. MVPs work at Meadowlark.
The Ramsey Show.
So I am 20 years old, straight out of high school. I moved to Phoenix, Arizona to start my own business selling furniture.
What does selling furniture look like?
So I go around picking it up, clean it up, take really good pictures and sell it. I'll probably do about $100,000 this year net.
Wow. Some of you are standing around with your finger in your ear. And then you got a 20-year-old with a high school education that's making $100,000 flipping used furniture.
He's laughing all the way to the bank.
Financial advice for everyone. The Ramsey Show. Weekdays from 10 to 1 on News Radio, KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
The Manhattan Arts Center prides itself on consistently being open to new avenues to bring new arts experiences to the Manhattan region. Kendra Kuhlman is with us today. She is the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. And Kendra, before the break, we were talking about this notion of collaboration with people like yourselves who are execs, top of the flow chart, paid professional staff of nonprofit systems in the community. Give us a sense, if you don't mind, if you don't think they'd mind, of who they are, what that looks like, and what you guys talk about.
Absolutely. Well, whenever I have a problem, I look at who can I reach out to get some help with this? So as a nonprofit director, many of us are starting to fill the role of directors that have been in place for a very long time. There are a lot of new nonprofit directors in our community. Some of my closer nonprofit director friends, there's Carla Hagemeister, Josh Brewer, Michelle Sink.
Carla's with Flint Hills Bread Basket. We've had her on. Mm-hmm. Josh is with Habitat for Humanity. And Michelle is
Big Brothers Big Sisters.
We need to get them all on this program.
Absolutely. So I basically reached out to them, and we got together as a group of 4 and decided, we're sharing all these ideas and all of these thoughts anywhere from board development to HR to all the things, and maybe we should expand this group. And so we now meet as a nonprofit directors cohort. We don't really have a formal name, but we do meet the first Friday of every month, and we collaborate and we share And I know being an arts organization, no, we're not the breadbasket, but we still can share resources, and we've opened the doors to collaborating and helping other nonprofit organizations as well.
Well, all of you have so much in common, and not the least of which is you are here to serve a very specific purpose. You can very easily define what that purpose is. You will have some connection to government, local government, right? And that could be very broad, it could be very narrow. But let's just talk about that with respect to the Manhattan Arts Center, right? So help us to understand your relationship, your system's relationship with city government in Manhattan.
Sure. We do and have for several years. We've been fortunate to receive some city funding that we apply for. Each year, it does go to help with some of our operational expenses. Some of the hardest things are keeping the lights on, keeping the heat going, snow plowing, things that people don't think about as expenses. So we are fortunate to have that support. Something that I do feel is needed in our city is a position dedicated specifically to arts and humanities. With the growth that we've seen, I think it cannot go unnoticed that we need an arts and culture strategic plan. I think we need to be able to incorporate the arts into decision-making moving forward.
You think that's something that you guys can do, or do you see that as a role of something that the city professional staff should do?
I think it could be both. I don't think that I personally could do it all. I know there's a need for it, and I think that's just going to strengthen our entire city as far as the arts and the growth goes. Otherwise, without a strategic plan, I think we're not thinking about the arts as we're growing forward and thinking about it in terms of economic development and how important the arts are for economic development.
I mean, you can make a case based on the conversation you and I have had so far already, just in the last half hour thereabouts. You've got all the things in place to allow for that to occur, right? Mm-hmm. You now have collaboration among the leaders of systems that are involved in this work that didn't exist before. You have an opportunity sort of with respect to this notion of changing generational dynamics and demographics, right? And so my experience has been that those things happen when you guys start talking about them out loud, and so now you're beginning that process, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
So help us understand the rest of. So you get a little bit of funding from the city. Mm-hmm. How much is it? It's a public record. We could look it up. But do you know off the top of your head what that is? $47,000 bucks, and your total budget is what?
$600,000.
Okay, so that's just chunk change. So help us understand.
But it is helpful.
I'm confident it is helpful, and you know what it's like at the city government level. They will balance all of these things. And they'll try not to raise taxes, and so we'll try to figure all that out. But give us a sense of where the rest of the money comes from and how you attack raising that money.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we do have an education program, and we do sell tickets. So $100,000 or so comes from just selling seats to our shows. Another $100,000 from education. I write several grants, and we are fortunate to have the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation. So we do get some grant funding from GMCF, from the Kansas Arts Commission. We get a little bit from there. We're working on some national grants as well. But one great thing the Kansas Arts Commission did this past year with their new director, Curtis Young, is to offer grants for general operating. And those are the grants. When you write a grant for a program, well, then you have to have staff to do that program. Sometimes you just need money to keep the lights on, sure, or replace the air conditioning, or all the things of an aging building. And I think it's great to have Curtis in that seat.
So our guest is Kendra Kuhlman. She's the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. Been on the job about a year and a half. We've been talking about how they're funded, what they're thinking about for the future. When you balance all of these things, do you have a careful, sort of conscious, purposeful thought of which comes first, the creativity, the ideas, or the money? How does that work?
Yeah, well, I have a great staff that helps with the creativity, and they have a wealth of ideas. So I put it on my shoulders to figure out the money, and it's a lot. It's a lot because you want to do all the things. You want to serve all the community. When you have a wait list for youth theater that's double the capacity, that's a problem. It's maybe a good problem to have, But yeah, I don't feel like we're able to quite serve the community in the way that we need to.
Well, if you think about that, right, that's management 101, and it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking a look at your entire operation. You're figuring out where's the demand and maybe where's not the demand. So have some things. Have you gotten rid of some things that weren't?
We have. Yep.
Tell us about it.
A couple of programs. My big thing that I say to staff is let's do more of what's working, and we keep moving in the direction of doing more of what's working and listening to our community and trying to grow in the areas where there's demand. Our clay studios are at max capacity. Our adult theater programs, as far as our shows, are doing very well. And our youth theater programs, we have had a few programs that just we were losing money. Great programs, and it's not all about. Of course, we're a nonprofit. It's not all about making money, but we had some partnerships that just did not make sense for the MAC to keep doing. And so rather than continuing those, we didn't eliminate them without passing them on, but we are continuing to grow in the ways that are working.
Well, and you got to think that there's an element of managing expectations in all of this too, right? You are the Manhattan Arts Center. You are housed in a former supermarket, right? This is not the Cineplex. We're not going to get a cheeseburger while we watch the performance. This is not a Broadway show. It is local community on purpose, right? And so that in itself, I suspect, can become a selling point.
Right, and fueled by volunteers. I mean, if you think about all the volunteers that have to go into all that we do.
I have heard an individual who has a job similar to yours, we won't mention their name, but they describe working with volunteers as really the best thing you could ever do and some of the biggest headaches they've ever had. I heard the phrase herding cats. Help us understand from your perspective just give us a sense of what are the realities involved with managing people who are giving of their time.
Yeah, and I think when I came in, we have had a lot of change in a lot of areas over the past year and a half. And sometimes that change for our volunteers that have been invested for a very long time, sometimes that brings fear. I don't look at it as anything too personal, but often it's volunteers that are invested in one or two things. And having that conversation of why we're changing, why we're doing what we're doing, and also getting them involved and invested in things that they are still interested in and keeping them in the loop and keeping them engaged. I think keeping volunteers engaged can be a challenge.
And my guess would be knowing what I know about our community, the demographics of our community. These things are cyclical, right? Yeah. You'd mentioned earlier the professionals that are aging out and retiring, and a new generation of millennials is coming in, right? And the same thing has to apply for volunteers.
Yes, exactly. And we have one of our biggest things we haven't talked about yet is our Mac and Cheese Festival, which is definitely fueled by volunteers of all ages. We did rely heavily on K-State fraternities and sororities, bringing them in, bringing some of our seasoned volunteers in, bringing in some artists I think we ended up having 60 volunteers that day.
So for people who are not familiar with the Mac and Cheese Festival, tell us what it is.
So I had this idea from day one. I wanted to create a festival for our community that would eventually outgrow our parking lot and maybe move into the park and maybe then grow from there. Not comparing directly to the Salina River Festival, but a similar idea of something that we could do every year and continue to grow and incorporate more and more into. So my goal with that was to keep people on site as long as possible. And engage them in as many different types of experiences as possible. So we had musical entertainment. We had a food truck competition. They each had to make a mac and cheese. So that we had a competition. We did, it's called Empty Bowls. So our ceramic studio created 70 or more bowls that we ended up selling, and then we donated all of that to Common Table. So we ended up giving back, which we love to do, a nonprofit giving back to a nonprofit. We had artist booths where they got to sell art. We had hands-on activities, demonstrations, a beer garden, all the things.
And this was this past summer.
And so we had hoped, this was last April.
Gotcha, okay.
This year it will be March 29th.
Which is tomorrow.
I know. We're working on it already. We're like, that is literally tomorrow. But we had thought, we might have 500 people. And 1,500 people showed up, and the food trucks sold out, and the artists were thrilled. And, what could we ask for?
Well, it's clearly an indication of what you described earlier, just with respect to the way people are thinking about arts in the community.
Yeah.
1,500 bodies is enormous. So, and
Yeah.
mac and cheese, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty creative. Manhattan Arts
the
Center,
mac.
and cheese, right? That makes all kinds of sense.
Right, and culinary arts,
There you go. We'll have you on again before that event so we can talk a little bit more about that.
Great.
Our guest is Kendra Kuhlman. She is the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. In keeping with their mission of Arts for All, they thrive on community involvement in an entire pantheon of the arts: painting, acting, music, classes, you name it, as well as memberships, volunteer activities, and sponsors. The Trust Company is an independent, locally owned wealth management and investment company founded right here in Manhattan in 1992. The experienced professionals at the Trust Company are recruited specifically for their financial, legal, accounting, and business expertise. They're also your neighbors who, guided by your hopes and dreams, will come to deeply understand your aspirations and goals. The Trust Company, locally owned, client-focused. Their only allegiance is to you. Visit thetrustco.com.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
If Kansas weather has taught us anything, it's to be prepared for everything. It's time to call M&S Plumbing, Heating and Air to make sure your furnace is ready. From full safety inspections to replacing your furnace, M&S Plumbing will keep you and your family warm this winter. If it's been a while since you've had your furnace serviced and inspected, be sure to call and schedule your appointment today. Simple fixes now can save you big money later.
Call the experts who care. M&S Plumbing, Heating and Air.
At Stormont Vale Health, our patients are our neighbors and our communities are home.
We invest in your health and our community by bringing high-quality healthcare closer to home. From our Wamego Clinic to our new campus in Manhattan and the Flint Hills Hospital in Junction City. Our partnerships with organizations like the Mayo Clinic and the Children's Miracle Network bring top-notch expertise to our region. We take pride in local collaboration to stay connected to our communities. Visit StormontVale.org.
Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care closer to home.
The Ramsey Show.
Up to 50% of American families are paying their adult children's bills to an average of $1,482 a month. Wow. I've never seen it like this. 25% of millennials, their parents are paying their house payment, their rent, or they're living in their basement. You pay your kids' bills. Psychologists call that enabling. As a matter of fact, enabling is quite the opposite of loving.
Go from paycheck to purpose with The Ramsey Show. Weekdays 10 to 1 on News Radio, KMAN. KMAN's Morning News. Tomorrow morning, 6 to 9. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
The Manhattan Arts Center is funded in part by the city government of Manhattan and by MAC members and friends. They will charge you for a ticket. They help earn money that way. There are donations that can be offered as well. We are visiting with Executive Director Kendra Kuhlman about the bottom line as Within Reason continues here on News Radio KMAN. Kendra, when you think about the future, right, you'd mentioned earlier this notion of your office in a former supermarket. Right, it's been retrofitted. It is remodeled. It serves the purposes, but I suspect it has, forgive the term, a shelf life.
Definitely. We are working to get some exact numbers on that shelf life with BHS. But I can tell you it's the space itself, not only is it limited, it's depleting. We are on a little bit of a time crunch, I guess you would say. We have started some preliminary plans for a new space and to move forward to continue to grow the arts in our community. And there's more of that to come soon.
What's your time crunch? Just ballpark.
5 years.
5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and clearly that you have to put boundaries on these things if you're going to be able to accomplish it. Right. So you also have some thoughts about, in addition to people coming to the center, there are ways to do what you do to get it out in the community. What's the plans there?
Yes. One of our initiatives that we have right now is to try to get some kind of transportation, a passenger van, where we can not only take students from the Arts Center into the community, so take them to the car museum or take them out into the Flint Hills, but also take art out into our neighborhoods and into our communities and have pop-up experiences, because not everyone can get to us. So let's take art to them.
When you think about arts and culture, and we talked at the beginning of the show about the way people think about their community, right? And I think my words were, we don't get up in the morning thinking about our community identity. But if you listen closely to the things that Kendra Kuhlman has been talking about for the last 45 minutes or so, we clearly have one, right? And clearly, if you've heard some of our previous guests, this notion of lifting up arts and culture within the community is a huge, significant component of conversation that has really taken on new life in the last 6 or 8 months. Is that what you found?
Yeah, I definitely, I think with the addition of the Art and Light Museum as well, I think we have seen the rise of different arts corridors and sections of our town. We're looking at the Douglas Center and the sculptures that are there, and that they're really working to create a hub right there. And then we have the downtown growing. And then I feel like what we would like to do is be that hub to keep that growth going.
When you were a child, when you were a young adult, were you creative and artistic?
I think everyone is creative. I mean, I've always had a very big imagination and a lot of ideas and a lot of thinking way outside of the box, or let's try this. I always tell the staff let's throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. And some of it does and some of it doesn't. But you've got to try it or you don't know. What
when you think about the demographics we were talking about earlier, and just the aging out of the people that are my age and older, right, and the coming in of the next generation and what that looks like post-COVID, the way they deal with each other, the way they communicate on social media, the way they deal within the community. What do you see as opportunities in the next 10, 15 years?
I think it's continued collaboration. I think it's continuing to get out of the silos. And we talked about it, as I was saying, about the nonprofit directors group. It's so easy to get in. You've got your blinders on and you have your mission. Which is important, but to take those blinders off, look at the community as a whole and how we can work to support each other.
In my career, I have described what you just talked about as sort of getting on the wave and riding it, right? And every now and then you need to get thrown off the wave. You need to be able to get over here with some others who've been thrown off and have that conversation. And if you don't do that, it's really easy to kind of keep doing it the way we've always been doing it.
Right.
Is that fair?
Well, I think you have to take into account how things have been done and not completely disregard, as I was saying, the deep history, the long history. Manhattan Art Center has been there that long for a reason. But I do think it's time to look toward the future and to look at the next chapter.
And mac and cheese, the next mac and cheese coming up March 29th.
March 29th.
Which is literally just, this is January the 8th, right? And so that means literally less than 2 months away.
And we're praying for the perfect weather again. So
let's hope that's the case. So when you've thrown some other stuff on the wall and see what has stuck, what so far has stuck that maybe is in the works, but you're not quite there yet.
I do think we have the capacity with a partnership with the City of Manhattan that has been in conversation to double our clay class offerings. Things that really are working well for us are things that require special tools. So our glass class, our the classes that you can't just, you need some special equipment to do. So those are working. We want to continue to grow those. We are at capacity in all of those classes. Along with our youth theater programs, we've got to do something about these wait lists. So we're going to need to find more space if we have to, hopefully partnership, if we have to rent that space, another expense added to that. But we are here to serve our community, and that's where we need to go.
And clearly in the last year and a half with you on the job, those conversations have begun, right? And we're not going to ask you to get specific about that because we don't want to upset any apple carts that have yet to be built, right? You are building the plane as you're flying it, would be my guess. And so we'll have you on here 6-8 months from now, and we'll have a conversation when that gets real. So last question for Kendra Kuhlman, the executive director of the Manhattan Arts Center. Most people in our town, as we mentioned at the top of the show, don't get up in the morning thinking about the arts or even creativity. But we have their attention right now on this program, at least some of them. So what's the one thing you want the community to know about the Manhattan Arts Center?
I think one thing is that I will always say everyone is an artist and creativity is a human trait. Whether or not you think about it, if you're designing your garden, if you're cooking a meal, if you're picking out your outfit, if you're doing creative decision making, if you are project managing, everything requires you to think about things with a creative perspective. And so I think we offer also a hub for people that do have very focused and serious jobs to come and just have an outlet, have some fun, come and just play. I think play is missing in our community a little bit. So we're there. We're there for you to come and play.
There are no expectations.
Nope.
No one will be judging you. No one will be giving you the D+ on
There's
a
no
linoleum
grades.
cut like I got in 7th grade from Mrs. Roper
That's
at
too
Pleasant
bad.
Valley Junior High. But we won't. Not that I'm so concerned about that. But that's terrific, Kendra. We appreciate very much your being on the job. Thank you very much for your being willing to share your thoughts with us. We hope to have you on again.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're delighted that you were here. If you're listening to Within Reason on News Radio KMAN, and if you are a regular listener to our program, you kind of get a sense of what we're trying to do. We intend for this program to be an effort to sort of be a key milestone in the ongoing big picture sort of continuum between what we describe as ignorance and knowledge. And I don't mean ignorance in a pejorative way. I mean it is simply we don't know. We need to learn more. And so that's one of the reasons that Within Reason here on News Radio KMAN exists. It's one of the founding ideas that Ned Seaton, who is the publisher of the Mercury and his family owns these radio stations, had in designing this show. Our goal is to dig deeper into community conversations and into societal trends. There's no shortage of either. And our aim on Within Reason is to help connect those dots that can link one part of a community conversation to another part, to link one set of ideas to another set of ideas that may often be divergent, to allow listeners of our live radio show or our recorded podcast, whichever way you consume us, to think deeper, longer, and stronger about all of that. We call it critical thinking, and we're pretty sure that we need more of it across the board. We think it'll lead to successful community and government, to relationships in general, to be open to new information, to consider it, and to be willing to expand one's horizon or even change your mind. The state legislature will convene on Monday. Our guest tomorrow will be State Senator Brad Starnes. He was elected and will begin his service on Monday. We'll be eager for that conversation with him tomorrow. On Friday, we'll hear from yet another state office holder. He is Stephen Johnson, Kansas State Treasurer. We'll find out what the State Treasurer does to fill up his days and nights here on Within Reason on News Radio KMAN.
The Ramsey Show's coming up next on News Radio KMAN, Manhattan, Kansas.